Okay, imagine this. Someone from, what, over 2,500 years ago writes what we think are the first surviving lines of Western philosophy.
Hmm.
But here's the thing. His main work, it's just gone, completely lost, except for this one single, uh, really profound but kind of famously obscure fragment.
Yeah.
How do you even start trying to understand a thinker like that?
It's a huge challenge, absolutely. But, it's also just a fantastic opportunity.
Right.
So today we're doing a deep dive into, well, into the mind of Anaximander of Miletus.
Anaximander.
Yeah. And our mission really is to try and piece together his groundbreaking ideas. We have to use those few fragments we have. And crucially, the reports from later writers, people like Aristotle, his student Theophrastus.
That's right, because we really want to uncover why he's not just some, dusty name in a textbook.
Yeah, but like,
He's this, colossal figure. People call him the first metaphysician, the first speculative astronomer, even the first geographer.
all of those things, yeah.
What always gets me about Anaximander is this huge leap he made, moving away from all the old myths to something way more abstract, more rational. How big a deal was that shift, really, from mythos to logos?
It was fundamental, absolutely fundamental. And you'll see, I think, how this ancient thinker, even though we have so few of his actual words,
Yeah.
he profoundly shaped the questions we still ask in philosophy, in science, even today.
Okay, I'm ready for some aha moments then, connecting those ancient dots to, how we see the universe now.
Exactly. Should be fun.
So to really get Anaximander's genius, we need to sort of paint a picture of his world, right? And where did he live?
Right, you need context.
Yeah.
So picture Miletus. It's the 6th century BCE,
Okay.
a really bustling Greek city-state. It's on the Ionian coast, which is modern-day Turkey.
A trade hub.
A major one, yeah. Perfectly positioned for all this exchange, not just goods, but ideas. With Egypt, Lydia, Mesopotamia, these huge ancient civilizations.
So lots of different people, different ways of thinking, all coming together.
Precisely. And this constant interaction, it fostered this really cosmopolitan atmosphere. It created this intellectual ferment, you could say.
Like a softening of old ideas.
Kind of a softening of prejudices and superstitions, as some put it. It basically encouraged people to start critically questioning the traditional Greek myths.
And that's where philosophy gets its start.
This environment, Miletus, it was the crucible, the birthplace of the Milesian school, the first formal school of philosophy in the West.
And Anaximander was right there, in the middle of it all. Now, biographical details, I'm guessing they're pretty thin on the ground?
Oh, very sparse, as you'd expect for that era. We know he was the son of Praxeades, lived roughly 610 to 546 BCE.
Okay.
He was a student of Thales, a big name, the first philosopher.
Right.
And that makes him an elder contemporary of the next guy in line, Anaximenes.
Okay, so Thales, Anaximander, Anaximenes, that's the school.
That's the core Milesian trio, yeah. There's actually a kind of charming little story about Anaximander from Diogenes Laertius. Apparently, some boys mocked his singing once.
Uh-oh.
And Anaximander just quipped back, "Then to please the boys, I must improve my singing."
Huh. That's pretty good. It hints at someone with, a bit of wit. And maybe not afraid to be out in public.
Exactly. It suggests a public presence. He definitely wasn't some, hermit philosopher hiding away.
And that public side seems really important for understanding him, doesn't it? He wasn't just thinking abstract thoughts.
Not at all. He was a prominent citizen, very active. There are reports he actually led a Milesian colony to Apollonia. Maybe even served as a legislator there.
The legislator. So he's involved in, the laws of the city.
Right. And what's fascinating is how his familiarity with these civic concepts like nomos law and dicta justice,
Okay.
how those ideas probably gave him a framework for thinking about the universe itself, like a cosmic polis.
A cosmic city-state.
Yeah, a self-regulating universe governed by its own kind of inherent law. He saw the elements interacting, sometimes one dominating like an injustice.
Like summer heat taking over.
Exactly. And then the necessary reparation, the balancing force, like winter coming back. It mirrored political ideas of balance and the rule of law.
That's a really powerful analogy. And he had practical achievements too, right? Not just philosophical ones.
Oh, definitely. He's widely credited with introducing the gnomon to Greece.
The gnomon. That's the vertical stick for telling time. The sundial thing.
Basically, yeah. A vertical rod for tracking the sun's shadow. He apparently set one up in Sparta to mark the solstices and equinoxes.
Which sounds super practical, but also shows him applying abstract knowledge, right? Geometry, astronomy.
It was a groundbreaking application, yeah. using abstract thinking for practical timekeeping. But maybe even more famously,
And the map.
the map. He was apparently the first Greek to actually draw a map of the known world, the Ecumene.
Okay, that's huge. What did it look like?
It depicted Europe, Asia, and Libya, which was basically North Africa, all surrounded by a big world ocean.
Just think about that for a second. Making a map? It's such a profound intellectual act back then.
It really is.
It's taking space, the world around you, and making it rational, scaled, abstract.
Exactly. And that act of cartography, it wasn't separate from his philosophy. It perfectly mirrored the kind of geometric reasoning he was applying to the cosmos as a whole.
So the map and the universe model, they're both about imposing a rational geometric order onto things.
That's a great way to put it. A remarkable unity of theory and practice right at the dawn of science.
Okay, so let's dive into that Milesian school dialogue. How did the ideas develop?
Well, you have to see it as this progressive conversation, really. Each thinker is looking critically at what the guy before him said.
And it all kicks off with Thales, founder of Western philosophy, right?
That's the traditional view, yeah.
Yeah.
And his big move was breaking away from the myths.
No more gods controlling everything.
Right. He started looking for a single natural principle, an arche, to explain the cosmos. And his pick was...
Water. Seems almost too simple now, doesn't it?
It does. But think about how revolutionary that method was. His choice wasn't just random, though. He based it on observation.
Like water is essential for life.
Essential for life, yeah. It exists in 3 states: solid, liquid, gas, everywhere.
Okay, makes sense.
Even his idea that the Earth floats on water, which sounds primitive to us, the key thing was proposing a universal natural substance as the ultimate reality. That was the monumental step.
So Thales puts water on the table. Seems pretty reasonable. But Anaximander, being his student, I bet he didn't just accept it wholesale.
No, he definitely didn't just nod along. He applied some serious logical critique.
Okay, what was his big problem with water?
He pointed out what he saw as a fatal flaw. The problem of opposites.
The problem of opposites. Meaning...
His argument went something like this. Look, if any single observable element, like water, which is obviously wet and cold, were the infinite archie, the source of everything, that its specific nature, its wetness and coldness, should have, over infinite time, completely overwhelmed and destroyed its opposites. Like fire, which is hot and dry.
Ah, okay. But fire still exists. Water hasn't taken over everything.
Exactly. Clearly, all the elements coexist, more or less in balance. So, Anaximander reasoned, the ultimate principle, the arche, cannot be one of these observable elements.
It has to be something else.
Something different, something neutral, something indefinite. A source from which all the opposites could arise, without being one of them itself.
Wow. Okay, that is a huge leap. From water to something indefinite. That's pure abstraction, isn't it?
It's a radical leap into abstraction, yeah. A major turning point.
And then comes the third guy, Anaximenes, Anaximander's pupil. He proposes air, or aesir.
Right.
Now, wait, doesn't that sound like going backwards, back to a concrete element like Thales water?
You might think that initially. But Anaximenes had a crucial innovation up his sleeve.
Okay, what was it?
His real genius was introducing a clear physical mechanism for how things change, how one thing turns into another.
Oh, so not just what it is, but how it works.
Exactly. He proposed condensation and rarefaction.
Condensation and rarefaction of
air, yeah. He argued that when air becomes thinner, rarefied, it turns into fire. Okay. And when it gets denser, through condensation, it becomes wind, then cloud, then water, then earth, and eventually even stone.
Wow. So he's got a whole chain of transformations based on just density.
Right. And this addressed a key weakness people saw in Anaximander's theory. Anaximander talked about things separating off from his indefinite source, but he didn't really offer a clear physical process for how.
But Anaximenes did. He even had a way to demonstrate it, right? Something with your hand?
He did. It's quite clever.
Yeah.
He pointed out, if you blow on your hand with your mouth wide open, the air feels warm. That's rarefied air, he said.
Okay.
But if you blow with your lips pursed, the air feels cool. That's condensed air.
Huh. Simple, but kind of brilliant. An everyday observation to back up his cosmic theory.
It really was. So you see this progression. Thales has the basic idea, the thesis, a concrete substance. Anaximander offers the critique, the antithesis pushing towards abstraction.
And Anaximenes finds a synthesis, bringing it back to a physical substance, but adding that crucial mechanism.
Exactly. That whole dialectic, that back and forth, really set the stage for pretty much all future philosophical and scientific investigation into first principles.
Okay, this is where, for me, it gets really wild. Anaximander's big idea.
Yeah.
The Apeiron.
Ah, yes, the Apeiron.
This feels like the moment philosophy properly invents metaphysics, moving beyond just the physical world we see. What is this Apeiron?
Well, the word itself is key, Apeiron. In ancient Greek, you have a, meaning without, and paras, meaning limit or boundary.
So without limit, boundless.
Boundless, indefinite, infinite. That's the literal meaning. Anaximander was apparently the first to actually use this specific term for the first principle, which was a huge step in itself.
Naming the unnameable, almost.
Kinda, yeah. And he described its properties. It's eternal. It's ageless. It was never born. It can never be destroyed. Infinite in time.
Sounds godlike.
He did call it divine.
Yeah.
And this is crucial, not like an anthropomorphic god, not like Zeus or Apollo. It was more like an impersonal, all-encompassing, governing natural power, the ultimate reality behind everything.
So not a god you'd pray to, but the fundamental stuff and driving force of the universe.
That's a good way to think about it. He said it surrounds all the worlds and steers all things.
Steers all things. So it's not just the source, it's also the governor.
Both source and governor. And the key property, going back to his critique of Thales, is that it's qualitatively indefinite.
Meaning it doesn't have qualities like hot, cold, wet, dry.
Exactly. It's not any familiar element like water or fire or air. It's this neutral, indeterminate nature. And that neutrality is precisely what allows it to be the inexhaustible source of all the opposing qualities without being limited by being just one of them.
Okay, that makes sense. It has to be neutral to give birth to everything without using itself up or overwhelming everything else.
Precisely.
So how do actual worlds like ours come from this boundless, indefinite Apeiron? It's not just sitting there, right? You mentioned motion.
Right. It's not static. It's defined by eternal motion. That inherent dynamism is the engine that drives cosmogony, the birth of the cosmos.
So the motion does what?
Well, the accounts suggest that through this eternal motion, something capable of begetting hot and cold gets separated off from the boundless.
Separated off? How? Like churning?
Often interpreted as maybe a great cosmic vortex, a dino. This spinning motion starts to differentiate things.
Okay.
And this process leads to a kind of primordial structure. You get a cold, wet nucleus, maybe like the early Earth and sea at the center.
Right.
And it's surrounded by a sphere of hot, fiery substance, like a shell of fire around it.
And the interaction between the cold, wet center and the hot, fiery shell, that drives the formation of everything else. Earth, sea, sky, stars.
That's the idea. Their dynamic interaction generates the world as we know it.
And here's another mind blower. Didn't some ancient writers say Anaximander believed in multiple worlds?
Yes. Several sources attribute this really startling idea to him. Countless worlds, Paris Cosmos.
Countless worlds, not just our solar system, but like whole other universes.
That's how it's often interpreted. Countless cosmoi, continuously being generated out of the Apeiron, existing for a time and then perishing back into it. An endless cycle of cosmic birth and death.
That is genuinely staggering for 2,500 years ago. An infinite source generating infinite worlds.
It pushes the boundaries of imagination, even for us today.
Absolutely. Which brings us to the thing we actually have in his own words, right? That single fragment.
The fragment, yes. Preserved by Simplicius, who was quoting Theophrastus, who was probably summarizing Anaximander's book. So it's already filtered.
Filtered, okay. But it's still considered the bedrock.
It's the bedrock of Anaximandrian scholarship. Famously obscure, incredibly dense with meaning.
Okay, so let's try and unpack it. What's the core message? You mentioned justice and injustice earlier.
Right. The fragment essentially says, from what things existing objects come to be, into them too does their destruction take place, according to what must be, kata krion. For they give justice, diko, and reparation, entices, to one another for their injustice, adikia, according to the ordering of time, kataton to chronotaxon.
Whoa. Okay, break that down. Injustice, adikia. That's when one element oversteps.
That seems to be the idea, the encroachment of one elemental power over its opposite. Think of summer's heat becoming excessive, encroaching on the cold's domain, or maybe the sea encroaching on the land. It's a disruption of balance.
Okay. And then justice, decay, and reparation, betisis. That's the balancing act.
That's the necessary restoration of equilibrium. The power that was wronged exacts its due. Winter follows summer. Land eventually reemerges from the flood. Balance is restored.
And this happens according to what must be kata krion, like it's necessary.
It's the absolute unbreakable law of the cosmos.
Yeah.
Necessity. It's not random. It has to happen this way.
And the last part, according to the ordering of time, kataton to chronotaxon. What's time doing here?
Time itself seems to act almost like a judge or an assessor. It ensures this cosmic law of balance is carried out in an ordered sequence, cycle after cycle, like the seasons.
So it's this picture of a dynamic universe constantly balancing itself out, governed by this inherent law, all unfolding in time.
Precisely. It's not just that the Apeiron is the physical stuff, it also embodies this governing principle, this cosmic law.
That's incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
It's unifying the material, the motion, and the law all into one concept.
Exactly. The Apeiron is this remarkably comprehensive metaphysical principle. It bundles together the material substrate, physis, the dynamic source of motion, and the immanent rational law, nomos, into this single boundless reality.
It really is like a first attempt at a grand unified theory, isn't it?
You could definitely see it that way, yeah.
Okay, so these deep metaphysical ideas, how do they translate into his picture of the actual cosmos, his astronomy?
Well, this is where he really constructs the first properly scientific picture of the universe. He systematically throws out the old mythological explanations.
Bye-bye, gods driving chariots.
Exactly. And replaces them with rational mechanics, geometric principles.
So the sun, the moon, the stars, they aren't gods anymore.
Nope. They're physical objects operating according to understandable principles.
So what are they in his model?
He pictured them in a really ingenious way. Imagine enormous hollow rings or wheels, like giant chariot rims.
Okay, wheels in the sky.
Wheels filled with fire, but mostly hidden from view by this thick, opaque, air-like substance that surrounds them.
So we don't see the whole fiery wheel.
No. What we actually see as the sun or the moon or a star is just the fire shining through a hole, an aperture, or a vent in that opaque wheel rim.
Wow. Okay, so the sun isn't a thing itself, it's a hole showing fire.
A hole in a wheel of fire, yeah. It's like looking through a nozzle at a furnace inside.
That's kind of amazing and
Yeah.
incredibly mechanical. It completely takes the divine out of it, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And this model wasn't just descriptive, it was explanatory. It offered the first rational explanations for things like lunar phases.
How so?
The phases of the moon were caused by the aperture, the vent, on the moon wheel partially blocking up and then opening again.
Ah, like a dimmer switch on the hole?
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
And eclipses, they were simply when the hole, the vent, got temporarily and completely blocked or closed up.
Simple mechanical explanations for these, previously terrifying or divine events.
Exactly. And really significantly, by putting these wheels, these rings, at different distances from the Earth, Anaximander is the first person we know of to really introduce three-dimensional depth into the universe.
Yeah.
He moved beyond thinking of the sky as just a flat dome over the Earth.
So space has depth. Different things are farther away than others. That's another huge conceptual leap.
It really is.
And his model of the Earth itself was just as radical, maybe even more so.
Oh yeah, he didn't think it was a sphere. He proposed it was shaped like a short, wide cylinder, like a column drum.
A cylinder. Okay. And we live on the flat top.
Live in one of the flat surfaces, yeah.
Okay.
But here's the really audacious part.
Go on.
This cylindrical Earth, it floats freely in the center of the cosmos. It's unsupported.
Unsupported. Wait, no giant turtle holding it up? No pillars? Nothing?
Nothing, just floating in the middle.
But why doesn't it fall? That must have been the immediate question.
Absolutely. And his answer was pure logic. Completely ingenious.
Okay, what was the logic?
He argued the Earth stays put by reason of its equidistance from all things.
Equidistance? Meaning it's right in the exact center?
Exactly. It's at the precise center of this symmetrical cosmic system. It's equilibrium, homeotos. Therefore, it has no more reason to move up than down or left than right.
Because all directions are equal from the center.
Right. There's no sufficient reason for it to move in any particular direction, so
Yeah.
it simply remains at rest.
That is brilliant. Using pure reason, symmetry, to explain why the Earth doesn't fall. That's the first use of the principle of sufficient reason, isn't it?
It's considered the first known application, yes.
Yep.
A landmark moment in rational thought.
You really can't overstate how important this whole shift was. He's taking the cosmos from being this, storybook place run by gods and turning it into a mathematical, logical, rationally understandable system.
Absolutely. He's asserting that the universe operates according to logic and geometry, that we can understand it through reason. It's laying the groundwork for mathematical physics, really.
And he didn't stop at the stars and the Earth. He applied this rational thinking to life itself. Biology?
He did.
Yeah.
He offered one of history's very first naturalistic theories for the origin of life. No gods involved.
Okay, how did life start, according to Anaximander?
He proposed it arose naturally in the moist element, maybe the sea, maybe some primordial mud,
Right.
and it was acted upon by the heat of the sun. Moisture plus heat equals life, basically.
A biogenesis.
And the first creatures.
He described them as being kind of fish-like, but enclosed in this prickly bark or shell.
Okay, like an armored fish. Something like that. And these creatures matured in the water, then eventually migrated onto dry land, and when they got there, they shed their prickly bark.
So life starts in the sea, then moves to land. That sounds vaguely familiar.
It does, doesn't it? But his theory of human origins is even more striking.
How did humans come about?
He reasoned, quite logically, that human infants are incredibly helpless. They need long-term care.
True.
So he argued the very first humans couldn't have just appeared in their current form. They wouldn't have survived.
Makes sense. So what was the solution?
His theory was that the first humans were actually generated and nurtured inside other creatures, specifically inside those fish-like creatures.
Well, humans grew inside fish.
They were protected inside these fish-like beings, like a fetus developing, until they were mature enough to fend for themselves. And then, these host creatures basically cast them ashore onto dry land.
That is wild, but also weirdly logical, based on his premise about infant helplessness.
It's stunningly original, and again, entirely naturalistic.
Now, obviously, it's not Darwinian evolution.
Oh, definitely not. No concept of natural selection or gradual change over eons.
But you can see kernels of evolutionary thought there, can't you?
Absolutely. You've got the idea of common descent, at least from aquatic life. You have adaptation to a new environment, moving from sea to land. And crucially, you have this logical argument based on fitness for survival.
Yeah, the helplessness argument, it's really remarkable. Seeds of evolutionary thought is a good way to put it.
A stunningly original and purely naturalistic approach to the origin of species.
So these revolutionary ideas, the Apeiron, the unsupported earth, life from the sea, how did they ripple outwards? What was his influence on later Greek thinkers?
Well, the influence is pretty immediate, especially among other pre-Socratics. You see echoes in Heraclitus, for example, with his focus on the strife and balance of opposites.
Okay.
And Anaximander's own pupil, Xenophanes, he really ran with the naturalistic explanations. He even used fossils finding seashells inland as evidence that land had once been underwater.
Wow, using empirical evidence like that. That's very Milesian.
Very much so. And later thinkers, people like Anaxagoras, the atomists, they're all building on this framework Anaximander established. A cosmos generated from some fundamental source through physical processes.
What about the big names, Plato and Aristotle? Did Anaximander reach them?
Oh, absolutely. Plato's philosophy in particular seems to bear his imprint. Many scholars argue that Anaximander's Apeiron, this boundless, indefinite source, was a crucial conceptual forerunner to Plato's own idea of the chukra.
The chukra and the timaeus, the sort of formless receptacle or substrate.
Exactly, that indeterminate base onto which the forms are impressed. There's a clear conceptual link there.
And isn't there an even more direct connection, something about the earth?
Yes. In Plato's dialogue, the Phaedo, Socrates, gives an argument for why the earth remains stable at the center of the universe. And it's almost word for word in Anaximander's argument. The principle is sufficient reason the earth stays put because it's in equilibrium, equidistant from everything. Plato just repeats it.
Wow. So Plato definitely knew Anaximander's work, or at least that specific argument.
Seems undeniable. It's fascinating to see those ideas persist and get reused.
Now, Aristotle.
Yeah.
You mentioned he's our main source, but also problematic.
Yeah, Aristotle is crucial because he preserves so much information, but he's also interpreting everything through the lens of his own highly developed philosophical system.
So he's kind of fitting Anaximander into his own boxes.
Pretty much. For instance, he tended to see the Apeiron as some kind of intermediate substance between the elements, sort of a precursor to his own concept of prime matter, per tu hilo.
Okay.
And he connected the Apeiron's eternal motion to his own ideas about the ultimate cause of motion in the universe, the prime mover.
So Anaximander's self-moving governing Apeiron becomes, for Aristotle, maybe a sort of early, less developed version of the prime mover.
You could see it that way, yeah. Aristotle is using Anaximander, but also kind of reshaping him.
But putting aside how later philosophers used or maybe misused him, what's Anaximander's real core legacy? Is it the specific theories?
You know, I'd argue his most profound legacy isn't necessarily the specific answers he gave. Those, like the cylindrical Earth, were pretty quickly superseded by better observations and theories.
Right.
His truly lasting contribution was in formulating the fundamental questions. The question that would basically define Western philosophy for the next 2 millennia.
He set the agenda.
He really did, especially for Plato and Aristotle.
Mm.
Problems like, how do we get the many different changing things in the world from one single eternal source? That's the classic one of the many problem.
Okay.
And the relationship between being eternal reality and becoming the world of change. These were central to Anaximander's thought with the Apeiron and the cycles of justice, and they became the core preoccupations for his successors.
So he's like the architect of the big question.
He's arguably the principal architect of the foundational problems of Western philosophy.
It's huge. Now, trying to reconstruct Anaximander today, you said it's challenging. Modern scholarship must grapple with this, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's a really vibrant field, but it's constantly dealing with what scholars call the doxographical problem.
Doxography, meaning the reports of opinions.
Exactly. Almost everything we know is secondhand, third-hand, maybe even fourth-hand. It's filtered through these later writers, the doxographers, who had their own biases, their own agendas, especially Aristotle.
So every interpretation is kind of provisional, educated guesswork.
To some extent, yes. It means every reconstruction has to be tentative. Take the Apeiron itself. There's still major debate about what Anaximander actually meant by it.
Like what?
Well, was it a kind of primordial, chaotic mixture of elements that then separated? That's one view. Or was it a single, unified, genuinely neutral substance distinct from the elements? That's another.
Or maybe something even more abstract.
Right. Some argue it's more like an abstract principle, like boundless potentiality or even the cosmic law itself, rather than a substance at all. Different scholars argue passionately for different views.
Because the evidence is so sparse and filtered. And that one fragment we have, the cosmic injustice quote, that must be ground zero for debate.
It's become a kind of philosophical Rorschach test, as one scholar put it.
Or Rorschach test. People see what they want to see in it.
Pretty much. Some read it in a very moral or existential way, like existence itself is an injustice and death is the necessary reparation.
Wow, jar.
Others see it as purely scientific or physical, just describing the cyclical balance of natural forces like seasons changing. No morality involved.
Okay.
Then some see political echoes the cosmic order, modeled on democratic ideals of fairness, isonomia. Others read it ontologically, about how the emergence of any particular being necessarily displaces other possibilities.
So the same few lines can be read in wildly different ways.
Wildly different ways. It just highlights the challenge, but also the richness of trying to understand him.
But regardless of the exact interpretation of the fragment or the Apeiron, the overall impact seems clear. This Milesian movement, with Anaximander leading the charge, it was a revolution.
A genuine scientific revolution, I think you have to call it.
Yeah, replacing gods with natural causes.
Impersonal causes and laws,
Wow.
yeah. Conceiving the universe not as a stage for myths, but as an ordered cosmos.
And pioneering the tools to understand it. Observation, analogy.
And abstract logical reasoning. That was key. It was a fundamental paradigm shift in how humans related to the world.
So, wrapping this up, Anaximander of Miletus, even with almost everything he wrote lost, he just emerges as this figure of incredible originality, incredible power.
Astonishing originality, yeah.
Oh my God.
He gives us the first real metaphysical concept, the Apeiron.
The first rational cosmology based on geometry and equilibrium.
The first naturalistic stab at explaining the origins of life.
And maybe most importantly, this first conception of a universe governed not by gods, but by impersonal necessary law. He really is the father of cosmology, isn't he? In the sense of trying to understand the whole thing rationally.
I think that title is well-deserved.
Yeah.
The systematic philosophical investigation of the world as an ordered, intelligible whole that arguably starts with him.
And like you said, his specific theories, the cylinder Earth, the wheels of fire, they didn't last. But that almost doesn't matter for his legacy.
It's secondary, really. His lasting achievement wasn't the content of the answers, but the nature of his questions and the methods he used to approach them.
By throwing out the old myths, the closed world.
And positing this boundless origin, the Apeiron, he effectively opened up a correspondingly boundless and open universe for rational inquiry to explore.
He showed for the first time, perhaps, that the cosmos wasn't just this mysterious thing happening to us, but something that was, at least in principle, knowable, understandable by the human mind, using reason.
A profound shift in perspective.
So maybe the final thought for you listening is this. Consider how those fundamental questions Anaximander was the first to really wrestle with. Questions about ultimate reality, what causes change, how unity gives rise to plurality, the structure of the cosmos itself. Aren't those the very same questions that are still driving philosophy and even science today? His boundless vision 2,500 years ago set in motion this incredible intellectual journey.
A journey that you could argue we're all still on, trying to grasp the nature of reality.
Absolutely. Still reaching for the boundless.